He was destined to be a king on one battlefield, the ice of the Montreal Forum. Instead, history demanded he become a soldier on another, the blood-soaked sands of Juno Beach. For one brilliant season, Johnny Quilty was the anointed future of the Montreal Canadiens, a hockey prodigy with the world at his feet. But the roar of the crowd was replaced by the thunder of artillery. His quest for a Stanley Cup was traded for a war of survival. This is not the story of a career cut short by injury. It is the story of a future stolen by history. It asks a devastating question. When a hero returns from war, what happens when the man comes home, but the player is left behind on the battlefield? To truly understand a life like Johnny Quilty's, you must first understand the world that shaped him. He was born in 1921, in Ottawa, Canada, a city and a country, still grappling with the long shadow of the Great War while unknowingly hurtling towards another. His childhood unfolded against the backdrop of the Great Depression, an era that stripped life down to its bare essentials. For families in working-class neighborhoods like Quilty's, there were no guarantees. Survival depended on resilience, community, and a quiet, stubborn refusal to despair. Yet, even in these bleak times, one dream burned brightly across the nation: hockey. On frozen rivers, backyard rinks, and in drafty arenas, the game was more than an escape. It was a source of hope and a forge for identity. It was a world of merit where a boy with worn-out skates and a fiery passion could, for a few hours, be a king. The players who ascended to the National Hockey League, that exclusive six-team club known as the Original Six, were more than athletes. They were living legends, proof that greatness could emerge from the humblest of origins. As the 1930s ended, the escalating war in Europe became impossible to ignore for Canada. On September 10, 1939, following Britain's declaration, Canada entered World War II against Nazi Germany, mobilizing over 1 million personnel by war's end. A surge of patriotism engulfed the nation, with recruitment drives filling enlistment offices in cities like Ottawa and Toronto. Young men from diverse backgrounds, farmers in the prairies, factory workers in industrial hubs, and students from universities responded to the call, viewing it as a defense of freedom against fascist aggression. For top athletes, this created a stark dilemma: pursue professional careers in sports like hockey, which was booming with the NHL's expansion, or enlist in the armed forces, potentially sacrificing prime years or even their lives. Economic recovery from the Great Depression added pressure, as military service offered steady pay and purpose. In this atmosphere of uncertainty and duty, Johnny Quilty matured, his prodigious hockey skills clashing with the era's global upheaval. Johnny Quilty's path from Ottawa's frozen ponds to near stardom was rapid and impressive. From childhood, he exhibited an innate command of hockey's intricacies, reading plays with exceptional foresight and executing them with a balanced, powerful skating style that combined speed and control. His movements were precise, allowing him to weave through defenses while maintaining possession under pressure. This talent made him a standout in local games, where he often dominated older competitors through superior positioning and quick decision-making. He rose quickly in Ottawa's competitive junior system, starting with teams like the Ottawa Saint Malachis in the late 1930s. There, he honed his offensive abilities, leading in scoring with consistent goals from sharp wrist shots and accurate passes that set up teammates effectively. His physical presence enabled him to win puck battles and protect line-mates, earning respect from coaches for his all-around game. Quilty's true breakthrough came with the Ottawa Royal Canadians in the 1939-40 season. At 18, he became the team's offensive core, dazzling with evasive maneuvers, rapid dekes, and visionary playmaking that created numerous scoring opportunities. He topped the league in points, blending individual flair with team-oriented contributions that elevated his squad's performance. Under his leadership, the Royal Canadians advanced through playoffs with thrilling wins, showcasing Quilty's ability to perform under pressure. They reached the Eastern Canadian Final for the Memorial Cup, junior hockey's top prize. In that series, Quilty shone, using his speed to break out of zones and his shot to score key goals, securing victory and a spot in the national final. Ottawa rallied around him, with newspapers praising his dazzling style that drew crowds and inspired local pride. Though they lost to the Oshawa Generals in the Memorial Cup final, a best-of-5 series where Quilty's efforts kept games close despite the defeat, his overall play caught NHL scouts' eyes. Teams like the Montreal Canadiens saw his complete skill set, scoring, passing, and defensive awareness, as ideal for professional success. Quilty emerged as Canada's top prospect, with predictions of immediate impact in the league, his junior dominance signaling a bright future amid the war's shadow. A fierce bidding war ensued, but there was only one place a player of his caliber was destined to land. The Montreal Canadiens, the most glamorous and successful franchise in all of hockey, won the rights to sign him. In the fall of 1940, a 19-year-old Johnny Quilty arrived at the Canadiens training camp. He was stepping into a dressing room filled with legends and hardened veterans. This was the team of Toe Blake, Elmer Lack, and Ken Reardon. For a rookie to crack this lineup was considered a monumental achievement. Quilty did more than just make the team. He seized a starring role. Coach Dick Irvin, recognizing his immense talent, placed him on a line with the veteran goal scorer Joe Benoit and the legendary Toe Blake. The chemistry was instant and electrifying. Quilty wasn't just a passenger on this line, he was its pilot. His vision and playmaking ability elevated his line mates, and the trio became one of the most dangerous in the league. His NHL debut was the stuff of storybooks. He scored the game-winning goal, immediately endearing himself to the notoriously demanding fans at the Montreal Forum. Throughout the 1940-41 season, he played with a poise and confidence that belied his age. He wasn't just good for a rookie, he was one of the best centers in the entire league. He finished the season with 18 goals and 16 assists for 34 points in 48 games, numbers that placed him among the league's elite offensive players. When the season concluded, the accolades poured in. He was named the winner of the Calder Memorial Trophy as the NHL's Rookie of the Year. It wasn't even a close race. He had beaten out a field of talented newcomers that included future Hall of Famer Sid Abel. The consensus was clear. Johnny Quilty was the future. He was hailed as the next great French-Canadian superstar, the heir apparent to the throne of the legendary Howie Morenz. The Canadiens had seemingly found their king for the next 15 years. His future was a limitless expanse of goals, championships, and glory. But as Quilty was celebrated as the best young player in the game, the world was descending further into chaos. The war was no longer a distant conflict. It was an all-consuming reality. Canadian troops were fighting and dying overseas. At home, the pressure to serve was immense. Johnny played one more season with the Canadiens in 1941-42. And while he was still a productive player, his focus was clearly divided. He watched as friends and fellow players traded their sweaters for military uniforms. The call to duty was becoming louder than the cheers of the crowd. So, in the summer of 1942, at the absolute zenith of his young career, Johnny Quilty made the most consequential decision of his life. He walked away from the Montreal Canadiens, from fame and fortune, and enlisted in the Canadian Army. Private John Quilty, Bren Gunner, was heading to war. The story of Johnny Quilty, the hockey player, was now on hold. The story of Private John Quilty, soldier, was about to begin, on a path that would lead him directly into the heart of one of the most violent and consequential days in human history. Quilty's transition from the hockey arena to the theater of war began, as it did for millions of others, with the methodical process of military training. He was deployed to England, which served as a vast staging ground for the Allied forces preparing for the eventual invasion of occupied Europe. For nearly 2 years, life was a strange mix of intense preparation, drills, and long periods of anxious waiting. The soldiers trained relentlessly for a battle they knew was coming, but whose date and location remained a closely guarded secret. Even amid the intense military preparations for the Allied invasion of Europe, hockey persisted as an essential element of life for Canadian troops. As forces amassed in England from 1943 onward, with hundreds of thousands of soldiers training for Operation Overlord, the game became a crucial anchor to national identity. Stationed thousands of miles from home, in cramped barracks and rainy camps, Canadian servicemen faced constant drills, rationed supplies, and the psychological strain of impending combat. Hockey offered a tangible connection to their pre-war lives. the crisp sound of skates on ice, the camaraderie of team play, and the competitive spirit that mirrored their cultural roots. It provided structure in chaos, boosting morale and fostering unit cohesion during long waits for deployment. Service leagues were hastily organized across bases in southern England, utilizing frozen ponds, outdoor rinks built by engineers, or even concrete surfaces when ice was unavailable. These competitions were remarkably intense, drawing players from various regiments and featuring talent from the NHL and senior amateur leagues who had enlisted. Stars like Boston Bruins' Milt Schmidt or Toronto Maple Leafs' Syl Apps participated in similar leagues, elevating the quality of play. Games often attracted crowds of fellow soldiers with makeshift goals and borrowed equipment, yet the level of skill was professional grade, complete with body checks, strategic passing, and heated rivalries between units. Quilty, serving with the 3rd Canadian Infantry Division, naturally emerged as a standout on his Army team. His speed, puck-handling precision, and scoring ability, honed in junior leagues before the war, dazzled in these matches. On frozen fields near Aldershot or makeshift rinks in Sussex, he orchestrated plays, outmaneuvered defenders, and netted goals that reminded everyone of his pre-war promise as a phenom. These games transcended recreation. They served as a psychological lifeline, offering brief escapes from the grim realities of their mission. Between endless training for amphibious landings and the constant threat of Luftwaffe raids, hockey sessions allowed soldiers to reclaim a sense of joy and normalcy. Laughter during post-game huddles or the thrill of victory provided emotional relief, helping combat homesickness and anxiety. However, the troops knew this was temporary, a prelude to the massive operation ahead. By spring 1944, with over 1.5 million Allied forces in Britain, the invasion's imminence cast a shadow over every activity, including these ice battles. The climactic event arrived on the morning of June 6, 1944. D-Day, the largest amphibious assault in history. Private John Quilty, a Bren gunner in the Royal Regina Rifles Regiment of the 3rd Canadian Division, was assigned to the first wave hitting Juno Beach, one of 5 Normandy landing zones. The Bren, a British light machine gun weighing about 23 pounds, was essential for laying down suppressive fire to cover advancing infantry, capable of firing 500 rounds per minute. However, its distinctive sound and the gunner's exposed position made it a prime target for enemy snipers and artillery, increasing the risk for operators like Quilty. As his Higgins landing craft approached the beach at around 7:45 a.m. under the codename Nan Sector, the air was filled with terror, the roar of Allied bombers and fighters overhead, the boom of naval guns from battleships like HMS Ajax pounding German defenses, and the incessant rattle of MG-42 machine guns from concrete pillboxes on the cliffs. Smoke from explosions obscured visibility, and the sea was rough with 4-foot waves. The ramp dropped into waist-deep water amid underwater obstacles and mines, and Quilty waded ashore under heavy fire, carrying his Bren and ammunition. The beach was a nightmare, littered with craters, barbed wire entanglements, and anti-tank Czech hedgehogs, while German 88mm guns and mortars rained down shells. Bodies floated in the surf, and the sand was slick with blood from the initial waves. Quilty's mission was to cross 200 yards of open kill zone to secure the seawall and push inland toward Courseulles-sur-Mer. He performed his duty amid the pandemonium, setting up his Bren to deliver bursts of fire at German positions, suppressing enemy gunners and enabling his platoon to advance through wire cuts and minefields. But in the storm of metal and explosions, a German 81mm mortar shell detonated nearby, its blast wave hurling shrapnel in all directions. Quilty was slammed to the ground, initially feeling a hot, numbing sensation in his lower leg. Attempting to rise and continue firing, he was hit by excruciating pain as he saw his boot lacerated and his ankle pulverized by jagged fragments, bones fractured and tendons severed. In that instant, the powerful, fluid legs that powered his skating and on-ice dominance were irreparably damaged. His combat lasted only minutes on the blood-drenched beach before medics dragged him to a casualty collection point under fire. Evacuated by landing craft to a hospital ship, he became one of over 1,000 Canadian casualties on Juno that day, part of the 21,400 Allied troops who landed there amid 14,000 losses overall. This wound ended his war and altered his post-war life, marking a profound sacrifice and a day of immense heroism and loss. For Johnny Quilty, the end of the fighting was the beginning of a different kind of battle. He would spend the next year confined to military hospitals in England and Canada, enduring a series of painful and complicated surgeries. Doctors worked tirelessly to piece his shattered ankle back together, inserting metal pins to hold the bones in place. The threat of amputation was very real. They managed to save his leg, but the delicate, complex machinery of an elite athlete's ankle was gone forever. The long, grueling months of recovery were a testament to his quiet resilience, but the physical and psychological toll was immense. When he was finally discharged and returned to Canada, he was welcomed as a war hero. His story had been followed by fans back home, a symbol of the sacrifices the hockey world had made for the war effort. The Montreal Canadiens, staying true to their promise, honored his contract. In the fall of 1946, just 2 years after he lay wounded on Juno Beach, Johnny Quilty attempted one of the most anticipated comebacks in hockey history. He was only 25 years old, an age when most players are just entering their physical prime. The entire country watched, hoping for a miracle. But from the first day of training camp, it was clear that the man who had returned was not the same one who had left. The physical scars of his injury were evident. He skated with a pronounced, painful-looking limp. The explosive gear-shifting speed that had been his greatest weapon was completely gone. He was still a brilliant hockey mind. He could see the plays develop. He knew where the puck was going to be. But his body could no longer cash the checks his brain was writing. The courage it took to even step on that ice is difficult to comprehend. He played in 19 games for the Canadiens that season, and later a handful more for their minor league affiliate. There were fleeting moments, brief flashes where you could see the ghost of the player he once was, a clever pass, an instinctual move to an open space. But they were just echoes. It was a heartbreaking spectacle. The fans at the Forum treated him with irreverent respect, but the magic was gone, lost forever in the Normandy sand. In a bittersweet turn of fate, the Canadiens went on to win the Stanley Cup in 1946. While Johnny Quilty had been a part of the organization, his name was not engraved on the trophy, as he had not played for the main club that season. Yet, for his teammates and the fans in Montreal, he was undoubtedly a spiritual member of that championship team. The victory was a tribute to the team he had helped build, and a solemn acknowledgement of the sacrifice he had made. It was a championship he had earned in spirit, if not in the official record books, a final, poignant reminder of the career that had been stolen from him. After hockey, Johnny Quilty turned his back on the fame and celebrity he had once seemed destined for. He returned to his hometown of Ottawa and deliberately chose a life of quiet anonymity. He took a job with the federal government as a stationary engineer, and, in his spare time, he coached junior hockey, mentoring young players in the city where he had once been a prodigy. He was giving back to the game that had given him so much, and had so much taken from him. He lived a modest, unassuming life. He rarely, if ever, spoke of the war. His Calder trophy and his Stanley Cup ring were tucked away, not put on display. Like so many veterans of his generation, he carried his trauma silently. The concept of post-traumatic stress disorder was decades away from being understood, but the invisible wounds of his experience on Juno Beach were undoubtedly a heavy burden. Those who knew him in his later years described a kind, gentle, and serious man who bore his fate with a remarkable lack of bitterness. He never publicly lamented what he had lost. His story, however, has one final tragic chapter. In 1969, at the tragically young age of 48, John Quilty suffered a fatal heart attack. The incident occurred suddenly on September 12, 1969, in Ottawa, where he had returned to live a quieter life after his hockey career ended abruptly 2 decades earlier. Medical reports indicated that the heart attack was likely exacerbated by years of physical strain from his wartime injuries and the rigors of professional sports, combined with the stresses of post-war adjustment. Quilty had been working in sales and coaching minor league teams in the 1950s and 1960s, but his health had gradually deteriorated, with lingering effects from the shrapnel wounds sustained on D-Day in 1944 contributing to cardiovascular issues. Doctors noted that such conditions were common among veterans of his generation, who often faced long-term complications from battlefield trauma without modern medical interventions available at the time. His passing was mourned deeply in Ottawa, his hometown, where local newspapers ran a front-page obituaries recounting his journey from local rink prodigy to NHL Rookie of the Year in 1946, and Stanley Cup champion with the Montreal Canadiens. Friends and family gathered for a modest funeral at St. Patrick's Basilica, attended by former teammates, coaches, and fans who remembered his explosive speed, precise playmaking, and the promise he showed before the war interrupted his path. In the broader hockey world, tributes poured in from the NHL community, with the Canadiens issuing a statement honoring his contributions to their 1946 title and lamenting the unfulfilled potential of a career cut short by injury and circumstances. Publications like the Hockey News highlighted how Quilty's story encapsulated the lost opportunities of many athletes from the World War II era. His death served as another reminder of the price his generation had paid, not just in battlefields like Juno Beach, but in the lasting toll on their bodies and lives. Quilty's era saw countless young men sacrifice prime years to the war effort, returning changed, with dreams deferred or destroyed. At 48, he joined too many peers who died prematurely from war-related health issues, underscoring the hidden costs of global conflict long after the guns fell silent. Ottawa residents and hockey enthusiasts alike reflected on how his brief brilliance on the ice symbolized resilience amid adversity, even as his early end evoked sorrow for what might have been in a world without war. The legacy of Johnny Quilty is not one of controversy, but of profound complexity. He is the human face of a generation's sacrifice, a poignant symbol of the talent and potential that was lost to the Second World War. To remember him only as a war hero is to sanitize the depth of his personal tragedy. The real story lies in the tension between his two identities, the brilliant athlete he was and the courageous soldier he became. His life is a powerful lesson that heroism and heartbreak are often two sides of the same coin, a reality defined equally by what it achieved and what it lost. In the hockey world, his legacy is that of the ultimate what if. To this day, hockey historians and die-hard Canadiens fans speak his name with a unique blend of reverence and sorrow. What if he had never gone to war? Would his number hang from the rafters in Montreal? Would his plaque be in the Hockey Hall of Fame? These unanswerable questions are the core of his legend. He is a phantom of greatness, a player whose legacy is built not on a long list of accomplishments, but on the certainty of what he would have accomplished. In the end, his story is about a form of courage that is rarely celebrated. We rightly honor the courage it took to storm a beach under heavy fire, but there is also the quiet courage it takes to live with the aftermath, to carry the weight of a broken dream with grace and without complaint. He was a star for a moment and a hero for a lifetime, but his true legacy is not etched in the silver of the Stanley Cup. It is found in the quiet dignity of his post-war life and in the haunting echo of what might have been. That's a wrap for today's video. If you enjoyed it, smash that like button, drop us a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss our new content. Thanks for watching.